Everybody. Here we are at Friday afternoon tea and chat. Welcome to Tea and Chat, your weekly dose of spiritual growth and transformation, where we explore your natural spiritual abilities and empower empaths, intuitives, and highly sensitive folks to transform your sensitivity into strength. Each week we'll have a different topic, uncovering practical tools, insight, and guidance to help you thrive on your journey. This week, we're going to be talking about top 5 myths about clairaudience and telepathy, debunked. So thanks for joining. If you're new here, this is a 30-minute segment. I'll talk about our topic and give some practical tools and tips along the way, but especially at the end, I'll give some how-tos. If you're new and you want to comment in the live, there's 2 comments under here. I think they're by tab. You have the comments, regular comments, and then there's the live stream comments. If you comment in the live stream and you would like a little mini read on something, I'd be happy to give you a little mini read. And if you don't want a mini read, you can still comment and just say, no, thanks on the read. All right, let's get into it. By the way, if you haven't subscribed and hit the notifications, please do that. Top 5 myths about clairaudience and telepathy. As many of you have heard from me and from lots of others out there, there's a #1 podcast out there called Telepathy Tapes. So they're talking with nonverbal autistic individuals who they've found to be extremely telepathic and psychic. What does psychic mean? Of the soul. So it doesn't have to be a superpower, although they're really have some superpowers, but we all have these psychic or soul abilities. So with the advent of that podcast, I think it's #1 now, there's a lot more attention on clairaudience and telepathy. So I wanted to do a live today to talk about what are some of the intricacies and the top myths. We're going to bust through some of those myths and hopefully inspire you to try to communicate this way yourself. I'll tell you, one of the big things I learned from the telepathy tapes is if these young people that are nonverbal and autistic are picking up not only thoughts, but like where the parent was all day, what they ordered for lunch, you know, like really specific things. If things are that clear in their awareness, what are we broadcasting all day long, you know, in our thoughts? And so for me, it's really taught me to be super mindful of my own thoughts all day long. Let's take a look in the chat here. Hi, Stefana. Good to see you. I'm glad you like the topic. Great to see you. Stefana is a leader and she works with other leaders. All right, let's get into these top 5 myths. So what is clairaudience and telepathy to start with? Well, they both plug into the same energy systems in the body, which I'm not going to get into all the mechanics of that today. I would say broadly that clairaudience means clear hearing, and telepathy is more about thought forms. You get a whole thought form of communication coming at you. And some of these we hear of, like, well, I'll get into all the myths in a minute. But for example, clairaudience, you might hear specific direction, like a guide, a voice in my head. And maybe since I'm female, I'm hearing a male voice, clearly not my voice, not a higher self, but somebody else saying, turn left. And you can decide whether to do that or not with your own intuition. But maybe I decide to turn left and then realize, oh, there was an accident had I gone straight. And so that was direction coming from spirit. That's clairaudience, where you hear the clear hearing, you hear clear words. And to me, it shows up really quickly, like just a couple of words. I don't get a whole diatribe or a fluff story about why that is so. It's just like, turn left, 2 words, boom, that has everything you need. So that's how I hear clairaudience a lot. you might hear deceased loved ones coming in to say happy birthday or I love you or messages like that. Now, the difference in telepathy is more like a whole thought form comes in. You get the image in your head, oh, I need to go down to the library around lunchtime. You kind of see the whole thing. You see people sitting eating lunch, so you know it's lunchtime, and you know you need to go to this specific library and maybe look for a book on astrophysics. Or I don't know. I certainly wouldn't, but or maybe somebody does. You get that whole thing. So clairaudience would have said, wake up, go to the door, go out the door, drive your car here. You know, it would have the step-by-step instructions that telepathy is going to have, like the whole thought form coming at you of the whole transmission. Part of our natural abilities, we all have. So I'm going to be talking about clairaudience and telepathy today, but it's kind of fine line between clairvoyance of seeing energy, claircognizance of knowing energy. And I won't be talking so much about feeling or picking up emotions and stuff today, although they're really all somewhat connected. So I'll try to keep this more to clairaudience and telepathy. Most people experience these every day and they don't know it. And that could be due to fears or myths. And we're going to get into those today. Let me tell you about one clairaudience story of a filmmaker. So there's a award-winning filmmaker from Australia, Bill Bennett. About 7 years ago, he's driving his car. It's late at night. He tells a story in his movie, PGS, Personal Guidance System. Go check it out. I think it's streamable, you know, wherever you get your movies. If you like this kind of content, you probably really enjoy his story and his movies. He's out with a new movie right now, My Way, The Way, My Way, something like that. So he's out in the United States with that movie. The movie he directed, he's a director, and he was in it too. PGS started by clairaudience. So he was driving in the middle of the night trying to get to the airport or something, and he heard a voice. And based on that voice, he decided to stop, even though he had a green light. And then seconds later, like a big Mack truck drives by, which would have taken him out, probably. And so he set out on this quest. Who was that voice? What was that voice I just heard? And where did it come from? And how do I get there again? And so I thought that would be a good start for our quest today, that question for him, obviously it wasn't his own voice, and he was just driving to the airport. It's like, why would my own voice say stop? So he went on this quest literally around the world and talked to all these spiritual teachers, including my teacher, 𝗕𝗢𝗄𝗎, is featured in the film. So check that out. He went and he decided to use his intuition, because that was intuition, went from person to person and found all these great spiritual teachers all around the world. So it's a very interesting development. So clairaudience and telepathy, we all have, it's all built in. Let's get into some of the myths. So myth number one, let me just check the chat. Stefana, yep, good to see you. Yes, yes, Danny, thank you. All right, myth number one, hearing spirit is scary and unpredictable. So you might think, suddenly just I'm having a quiet moment and all of a sudden some creepy message is going to come in the middle of the night, or it's going to disrupt my daily groove. And you think, I don't want that. I just want to be calm and peaceful and zen and, you know, in my own space. So this is part of myth number one. Hearing them is scary and unpredictable. The actual truth of that is that clairaudience is usually more subtle. It's not really somebody yelling at you unless there's physical danger. Like if you're about to drive off the cliff, you know, and a voice, maybe your guide or something goes, turn right or turn around or stop. That might come in more clearly, but usually it's more subtle. And here's another thing too, is it can come in song lyrics. This happens to me sometimes. I'm a professional musician also, and I'll have a lyric going in my head or a groove going. And when I stop and think about that, it's usually a loop. So it's not like the whole verse, it's not the whole composed song, it's one segment of it. And that segment keeps going. If that's ever happened to you, hit a heart. Let me know that's happened to you too. But like one segment keeps looping around, and I have that. And then if I tune in and I go, what is the actual lyric there? And there'll be a message for me, sure enough, in that lyric. This happened to one of my students just last week. We were doing a training. So, I teach clairvoyance. I teach people how to open their natural abilities. And so she had moved along in the progression of classes, and she's learning how to read and interpret energy. And this is a way of unfolding your own path, getting your own clear answers from spirit. So it doesn't have to be that I want to be a professional reader or anything. So a student's in class, she's learning to read, and she said, I'm looking at this, this person and the energy, and this lyric keeps coming in my head. But she says, I can't quite get the lyric. So she said, here's the artist and the song, and between us in the whole class, she was able to sing the hook, the part of the song she was remembering, and it just kept looping. Like I said, it just kept looping. And we came up with the lyrics. And once we said the lyrics, she's like, oh, I know exactly what that's about. And that answered my question of what I was looking at. So clairaudience telepathy is a way of receiving answers from spirit too, if we learn how to interpret these little subtleties. Here's another example. If you've had a loved one that's passed away, and maybe you're thinking about them, and then you're driving down the road, and a few minutes later, or just like a second later, boom, their favorite song comes on the radio. Oh, I was just thinking about Aunt Brenda. And boom, here comes her beach song, that favorite song that always reminded her of going to the beach, her happy place, or whatever. The telepathy could have been sending you a hello from Aunt Brenda, and then the song came on to confirm there's a connection going on. What do we got here? Linda C., a musician. Great. Guidance often speaks to me in song playing in my head. Yes. Sometimes it's also a song playing in a store, specific loop. Yeah, I have that too, as a professional musician. And it used to really be a problem for me when I'd go in the studio to record, because I'd have a loop in my head like for hours afterwards until I learned how to manage that. And we'll get into some of that as we continue on. How about one more example here? You're lost on a road trip and a little voice in your head nudges you to take the second exit. And then you find out by taking that exit, whoa, there was a big car crash ahead that I was able to avoid. Here's one pro tip, by the way, if you want to develop clairaudience telepathy communication in regards to this road trip. Sometimes just for fun, I'm driving down the road and I'm like, I need to find healthy food here in a bit. Usually I bring food, but if I need a food or a bathroom or something, I'll just tune in and I'll go, which exit should I take? Third exit. Okay. So I'm driving along, and sometimes I'll override that and I'll go, oh, that doesn't look right. And then I drive by and I go, oh, there's a healthy place I could have got food or a bathroom or whatever. You can start kind of training yourself with these little exercises. Let's get into myth number 2. Let me just check in. Yep. All right, myth number 2, telepathy is only for psychics or gifted people. So only if you're on TV, if you're Matt Fraser or the Hollywood medium, what's his name? Tyler Henry, or the, what's New Jersey? No, the Long Island medium. Only if you're one of those gifted people can you tune into this. Nope, not true. There's that thought because we see them on TV and because they're so gifted. But reality is, it's like Linda here's a musician. Yeah, anybody could pick up an instrument. We all did in elementary school. We all played instruments in elementary school, but certain people had more of affinity to it, like Linda here, that really went on and studied deeply. And even within that group of people who became professional musicians, there's some really elite musicians that are the principal of the New York Philharmonic, where they just everything they touch is gold. That's so in the psychic world as well. There are people with everyday tuning into their abilities, and then there's professionals, and then there's really highly skilled people. And usually they have particular skill sets for a purpose. Let's look at like Long Island Medium. So she works with people who have a deceased loved one that passed over, and they want to talk to that deceased loved one or have some sort of communication, finalization or something, and that helps them. So that's one specific type. They're called evidentiary psychic mediums. But let's get back to this. We're on myth 2, that telepathy is only for gifted. The truth is it happens all the time, especially between family members, loved ones, your sweetie pie, but sometimes strangers too. And you don't have to be in the same room. You can actually pick up thoughts from far away. This has happened with me with family members. I'll feel like a disturbance in the force. And and then later come to find out, oh, something major just happened, with a cousin that I'm close to, or, another family member or something. Let's look at some real world examples of this. You're going along your day and you're thinking about a friend. You haven't talked to them in months, and then suddenly they text you, bing, that they're already sending you thoughts. This happens to me as a professional reader. Sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and like my 10 a.m. client, their energy is right here. Tell me about this. Tell me about this. I want to hear about this. And, I kind of get the whole download there. I'm like, at 10 o'clock, I will. And I move them out of my space. So that client could be in another country, but their energy is right here. And how's that sent? In this case, it was sent by telepathy as a whole thought form with a to-do list of, I want to look at this pattern in my life. I want to look at this job. I want to look at why is this relationship happening or whatever. These kind of things come in. What's another real life example? You're sitting there talking with, maybe you have something you want to talk to a friend about. They walk in the door and they start talking about exactly that thing first. They've already got that silent communication from you. How about parents and kids? There's an undeniable bond there, especially for the young ones. Now, here you are courted, so there's other aspects of communication going on, but that's a real common one as well. Yeah, the parent knows that the baby needs something in the other room. Or even if a child is at school later on and the parent's like, uh-oh, something went down, then you get a call from the school. Oh, somebody got hurt. I need to go pick them up. So it's a line of communication on a certain frequency band, and you can learn to tune into it. Some other quick examples to look out for: salespeople, buy this. Don't buy that one, buy this. Or how about you're on a date and maybe you even hear with clairaudience, I'm the only one. That person is trying to transmit, I'm the only one. Just like a salesperson, you have to buy the red car, but I don't like red. The red car's the one you want. Watch out for that. Let's move on along to myth number 3. What else we got down here? All right, good to have everybody. I know there's some people not commenting. I'll let you know again, if you comment in the live section, there's 2 tabs below for the comments, I think. So the live comments will put you right into the feed here. If you have a question you want a reading on, I'll give you a little mini read. Go ahead and put that in here. I won't see the other comments until afterwards, but I will respond to those. And make sure you're hitting all the buttons for subscribe and stuff like that. If you're not on my mailing list, juliaharold.com, get there. Myth number 3, if I open up to hearing spirit, I won't be able to turn it off. I had an interesting story about that one time where I had just had some kind of opening of awareness, and I didn't recognize it until I stepped into a grocery store. I was in a Whole Foods in Petaluma, I think, California. And I'm walking through the grocery store and I see people really dressed nice, and you think, oh, they're healthy, they're here getting some good food, the affluent or whatever. But then I tune in, oh, her sister has cancer. Whoa, wow. And then somebody else walks by and, oh gosh, they're facing bankruptcy or something. And to me, the things that hit me in Whole Foods that day were on that kind of downer side. And so I was like, whoa, if tuning into spirit's going to be like this, I don't want that much. You can turn it down. There's a volume knob and you can learn to turn it down, but it can be a little startling at first when it kind of pops open. That happened to a client of mine too. Gave her a healing, and she had an opening where all of a sudden she was aware of everybody's energy and their thoughts and what was going on, and it scared her. And she called me up, Julius, make it stop. I'm like, but you wanted this since you were how old? And now it's happening. So I taught her some skills and some technique about how to dial that down, and she's never complained about it again since then. So the myth is that you think it's going to be a constant stream of voices and they won't stop. Like if I open that door, they're just always going to be there. No, you always have the power to control that. Okay. The real world example is you just have to practice tuning in, because you're tuning in without realizing it right now. So when you concentrate really deeply about what you do want to pick up, think about it like those of you that are parents and a toddler in the house. And so maybe a toddler's upset about something and they're just upset. I don't have my toy. I don't have my toy. Sometimes it's not the solution of getting the toy. Sometimes it's the solution of look at this shiny object over here. And they go, oh yeah. And they've forgotten about that. You could train your mind in the same way too. If you start being aware of these other energies, you can train your mind to be aware of the things you do want to be aware of. You can also kick out the stuff that you don't want. It's similar to like if you're in a party and it's loud and everybody's having a good time and there's music and so there's a lot of noise. You can pinpoint, you've selected, I just want to talk to this person in front of me, and you're focusing in, I'm just talking with this one person in front of me. But you can also take a moment and extend your hearing out and go, oh, I wonder what that lady's talking about over there. And if you tune in, you can start picking that up. In the same way, you can do that with your telepathy and clairaudience. We got to move right along here. Myth number 4, will people think I'm crazy? They might, but it's not your problem. If they admit, the reality is they're hearing guidance too, but there's been some kind of programming along the way that says you're imagining it, or that's not safe, or things like that. That's not true. We get guidance that's very helpful all the time. The truth is a lot of successful people have used their intuition. Let's look at Albert Einstein. He said his discoveries came from this inner knowing, not just logic. Fun fact, have you ever looked up Einstein's wife? She is a physicist and a mathematician too, but women weren't allowed to write papers back then. I bet they wrote and talked about all kinds of interesting stuff at home. Another person, Steve Jobs, he says intuition over data is where he made his business decisions. Musicians, Linda over here, you probably, as if you've ever composed songs, and I had a friend of mine did this too. In the middle of the night, he said he would wake up and hear a song. You'd get his instrument, record it, and go back to bed. And wake up in the morning like, oh, wow, that's a really great song. Wonder who wrote that. It's like streaming. The the music notes come in. It happens for me, like the melody comes in, then I have to find it on the keyboard. And myth number 5, I don't really have that other ability. Other people do. No, it's built-in standard equipment. We all have it, and you can learn to develop it. A real life example of that is babies. Look at babies. They're looking over your head. They're looking at where you really are. And young children too can see orbs or colors in the room, or that could just be a deceased loved one coming by to check on the new kid. You know, so all of these are quite natural. Let's get into some practical exercises. Any other comments? Linda says, I'm not sure if I'm picking up others' energy. However, I'm in a crowded, personally cramped situation. All I can think of is get me out of here. Well, part of that, Linda, too, is you're very sensitive on, you're very interested on emotional level of where people are. Are people grounded? Are in their emotions? Are they calm and kind of, are people okay? You like to kind of make sure everybody's heard and so forth. And in that case, in the cramped situation, you may be picking up other people's energy too. Of if you have your voice saying, I'm uncomfortable, but then if you're also aware of 5 people around you going, this is too crowded, now you have your voice times 5. And so then you're hearing and picking all that up. And it seems like, oh, I'm super uncomfortable. This happens with people that identify as empaths, highly sensitive people, intuitives, because we've been tuned in on an emotional level. I'm not so much talking about emotions today. I've done a couple of other lives. I invite you to come visit about that. But Linda, you're picking up also a lot on the emotional level because that's an interest to you. You're very curious about that department. And so in that case, in the room where all you can think of all of a sudden is get me out of here, that's because it's the amplification of more voices than just yours. So in that case, you want to drop everybody else's and get back to your own voice. Stefana says, what's the best way to differentiate between telepathic thought patterns, thought versus intuitive guidance? Well, it's all intuition, isn't it? Whenever you hear either intuition or clairaudience, these are ways of spirit being able to step down energy to our physical awareness and be able to utilize it. We have to always then go in and check our own internal knowingness. Just because a voice said turn left, I don't have to do that. I can go straight, I can turn left, I can stop, I can turn around. We have free will, but it's that learning to trust spirit and intuition. These are all different ways. It's all of intuition is just another way of developing our clairs, clairaudience, clairvoyance, claircognizance. All those specific words are just different ways of tuning into our intuitive awareness. And it's standard operating equipment, you guys. It's built in. We all have it. And how do we develop it? Practice. I'm going to get into some real world stuff here in a minute, and we'll just go over a little bit. Okay, let me get into the practical application. So what are some exercises that you can do for inner guidance? Like I mentioned earlier, if you're listening to a lyric that keeps popping in your head, that can be direction coming in from spirit. Really pay attention to that and see how that might apply to an answer that you've been asking the universe. One thing you want to do really carefully too in this is it's important to clear out other people's thoughts and intentions for you. You might not realize how much is in there, but if you sit to be quiet and tune into something, a first part of that is going to be letting go of other people's attention in your head. Oh, mom wants me to be like this. My peers say I need to do that. The internet lady said I should do this. My partner wants me to do that. These thoughts can crowd our space till we can't separate where's my own intuition in there. So, Stefana, this talks to your question about developing this as well. We have to make sure and clear out other people's intentions, loving or otherwise, for us, because it can be confusing to hear the real voice. And not just the voice of, well, I heard growing up that you need to work hard to accomplish. That's not my voice. I believe in magic and miracles and effortless, so learning to tune into that. If you're interested in trying with a partner, you can do some exercises with a partner. Start with something easy like a colored cards or something, and think of, you need to clear the other energies out of your space first, but you could have some colored cards or flashcards that have one thing on them, and have one person practice just focusing on that object, and the other person would tune in to on that person's thought level to what that image was. I don't have a lot of time to get into that, but that's just kind of a fun aside. Tuning into clairaudient. So this way it's like tuning in on a radio dial. Another pro tip on this too is you want your awareness to be in the center of the head. The thoughts and telepathy comes in on another energy center. I'm not going to talk about that right now because I think people might go a different direction with that. But if you start from being in the center of your head and then tune in, I want to send a message to a friend. They're in the hospital. I know they can't talk today. And so I'm not going to try to call them because they had throat surgery or something, but I'm going to send them goodwill. And I'm going to send them just some sparkly energy. See if they don't pick it up. If you're worried about hearing too many voices and stuff, like before bed, I'm going to have all these voices here saying, tell my nephew I love him, or, deceased loved ones giving messages to people right before you go to bed. You can make the intention, set the intention. No messages, you guys, tonight, unless it's really an emergency. Talk to you tomorrow. It's just like when I wake up in the morning and I have that 10 a.m. client sitting right there. So, yes, I see your questions and we'll get to them at 10. There's a lot of other thoughts you could do, but let's start there. Thank you for joining. Let's see what Stefana says. What about old thoughts, old programming, fear? Yeah, living in the past. That's all part of that clearing out the, well, there's a whole thing there, programming, deprogram. We do deprogramming here in this training as well. And that's a huge thing to get into. But in terms of letting go of old programs, a good start is that, like, being in our awareness in the center of the head, having a big grounding cord connected from the base of the spine to the center of the earth that acts like a trash chute. And as that old pattern floats by and goes, you'll never get there, grab it and throw it down the trash chute. Be like an Easter egg hunt. Oh, I found another one. I'm pulling it out of my awareness and I'm dropping it down the grounding cord. So thanks everyone for joining me. Great to have you. There will be no live next week. I'll be out of town, so we'll meet again on the 21st. If you haven't subscribed to my newsletter, please go to juliaharrell.com and subscribe there. I do classes, training. I have some online courses. You can get started right away and develop your natural abilities. So let's see, Stefana says, you're a gem. Thank you. Thanks, Stefana. Wonderful to have you here. Stefana is a strong leader and a guide for others. And she leads with intuition too. So thanks again, everybody. And I hope to see you again real soon.